This is Money Talk,
Everybody needs money. That's why they call it money.
guiding America on money matters for 25 years. This is Money Talk with Bob Brinker.
Greetings and salutations from the Starship Money Talk. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the program. It's America's money program, Money Talk. Coast to coast, border to border, in the islands of Hawaii and north to Alaska. The toll-free line is the same wherever you're joining us at 1-800-934-2221. That's our contact number. And as always, we would like to hear from you. Money Talk is the program that helps you to learn how to become your own personal financial manager and take charge of your financial future. That's what it's all about around these parts. Everything from investing in your tax-privileged accounts to saving for all of those future plans, including the education of the young sprouts. It is the acquisition of knowledge that empowers you to manage your financial future and let those sharks swim on by, take a bite out of somebody else's wallet. It's the last thing in the world you need to get involved with. That's what we're all about here on Money Talk, the strategies and the tools to achieve personal financial freedom for yourself and your family, so that if you're not already there, hopefully someday you can reside in the land of critical mass. Hope everything is going well for all of our Money Talk Trekkies, and we do appreciate the company, and we'll be taking your calls as the broadcast moves forward. Now, we did get a jobs report from the Labor Department on Friday, which showed a loss of 33,000 jobs for the month of September. However, if you've been a Money Talk listener, you've heard me say that Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma in particular, and even to some extent Hurricane Maria, has played havoc with the employment figures. In fact, there were many workers in the greater Houston area in particular that were displaced by Hurricane Harvey. There were many workers in the Sunshine State of Florida in particular that were displaced by Hurricane Irma. So the fact is, we've had some distortions in the figures as a result of the hurricane season, which has been extraordinarily active here in 2017. The water temperatures especially out in the Caribbean, have been near record highs, and high water temperatures in the Caribbean provide a fertile development ground for hurricane season. That's exactly what's happened here in 2017. So I do think that we're going to see a normalization of the employment figures once we get these hurricane-related figures out of the flow. It's going to take a little time to do that, but without question, the September figures were greatly distorted, in my opinion. Actually, I think we would have had a positive figure for September. Instead, we wind up with a loss of 33,000 jobs, hurricane-related, in my opinion. Taking a look at the demographics of the unemployment report, the white unemployment, a very low number. Now, keep in mind, we have a very, very low unemployment rate of 4.2. We've been adding jobs for many years, and we've seen this unemployment rate at 4 and a fraction for a long time, and right now it's at 4.2. So it's within the context of that 4.2% unemployment nationally that we want to evaluate the individual demographics. Now, white unemployment is measured for September at 3.7%, which is 0.5% below the national average. Black unemployment, these are Labor Department terms that I'm quoting, is at 7.0, which is significantly higher than the 4.2 national figure. Latino unemployment is listed at 5.1, and Asian unemployment is listed at 3.5. So those are the figures from a demographic point of view. And we're always interested in the education examples because if you're like me, you do believe that you're going to do much better. In most cases, not all, of course. If you turn out to be a rock and roll star, you're going to make a lot of money, whether you went to higher education levels or not. But having said that, if you take a look at unemployment by education level, those with a high school diploma have a 6.5% unemployment rate. That's way higher than that 4.2 national rate. If you look at those with a high school diploma, they're almost in line with the national average. High school diploma unemployment 4.3, national average 4.2. If you look at those with some college on their resume, they're at 3.6, bachelor's degree or better at 2.3. And of course, as we've always said, whether you go to college is not the point. The idea is if you don't go to college, if you develop a skill that you bring to the table that helps in your earnings power. Of course, if you do get a college degree or better, over a lifetime, on average, you make approximately $1 million extra over a high school diploma. So it's well worth the investment to get as much education as possible, and that obviously includes trade school education, picking up a trade or a skill. That's a wonderful thing to do. So, always fascinating to look at these figures from a demographic point of view and also from an educational point of view. And we like to do that from time to time. So that's the report on employment, and certainly we should expect that we'll be seeing better, I believe. We'll be seeing better figures coming in as we move forward. I did drill down a little bit on the figures to find some other interesting areas. For example, how many workers were unable to find a job because of this hurricane season? And that number came out to be close to 1.5 million. That's a lot of people. And how many workers were forced to accept part-time employment as a result of the hurricane season? And that number is almost 3 million. So when you put together the workers who could not find a job because of the hurricane season, plus the workers who wound up working part-time because of that, you add those two components together, and you're up to almost 4.5 million individuals. That's a lot of people. As far as average hourly earnings, we measure that on a nominal basis without adjusting for inflation. And on a year-over-year basis, that figure is 2.9%. And there's no question that there is some tightness coming into the labor market. And we know that from the unemployment rate at 4.2. That is actually lower than the Federal Reserve's definition of full employment. But if you take a look at company complaints, we've seen construction companies complaining they cannot find workers for the rebuilding efforts following the housing destruction in Texas and Florida in particular, not to mention what's gone on in Puerto Rico and in the Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands were virtually wiped out. If you take a look at U.S. Virgin Island places like St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, virtually wiped out. And those particular hurricanes there, Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria, just incredible destruction in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And, of course, Hurricane Maria really did a dreadful destruction job on Puerto Rico. So all in all, when you look at it in its totality, it's just been an absolutely incredible hurricane season. If you'd like to join us on our toll-free line, wherever you're listening, from Kauai to Kennebunkport, Fairbanks to Fort Myers, we have a toll-free line at 1-800-934-2221 right here on Money Talk. Uptown, downtown, crosstown, on your radio across America and worldwide on the web. It's America's Money Program, where it's all about the money. Bob Brinker along with you, and we thank you for joining us. You're welcome to call us on the toll-free line. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, it's 1-800-934-2221. Let's get Gary on the line in the Lone Star State of Texas. Hello, Gary.
Hello, Bob. I never miss a show, never.
Well, we thank you for that, and we're delighted to have you with us. What's up?
Thank you. Bob, I have a couple of questions. The first one, I've done some looking into the Wilshire 5000 index recently, and historically I read it was launched in the early 70s, and then the stocks grew to 76 or 700, and they have fallen in number, and I think they're currently at about 36 or 700 in the index. I'm curious why they continue to call it the 5,000 if it doesn't have 5,000 stocks in it, and is there kind of a shortage of stocks, or are there just penny and pink sheet type stocks out there the index does not want to touch?
Well, you just hit the nail on the head, Gary. That was a good guess on your part. First of all, at the end of last year, on New Year's Eve of last year, at the close of business, the index had 3,618 companies in the index. Now, what they want to do with the and far as the Wilshire 5000, that's simply branding. I mean, they can't change the name of it every time the number changes, so they just go with that as a branding name. But it is a total stock market index in the sense that its intention is to measure the performance of the majority, most publicly traded companies that are based in the United States. And that's what it's really about. They don't really want to go with pink sheet companies, penny stocks, thinly traded stocks, because I'll give you one reason. There are funds out there that follow the total stock market index. Well, you don't want those index funds entering orders in very thinly traded companies or pink sheet companies. So it's best not to have those. They're really illiquid. It's best not to have them in the index. So I think they're doing it properly.
Okay. All right, makes sense again. I was just curious because every other, the Russell 2000 and the total stock market does not exactly indicate, but I think it's around 36 or 700 also in the Vanguard variety, I want to say. But anyway, that makes sense then. And then, Bob, could I ask you a quick question regarding the U.S. national debt?
Sure.
Okay. I'm cheating a little because I pulled up the debt clock here just now, and we've blasted through the $20 trillion, as we know, unfortunately, on the U.S. national debt. But as I read down, it always sticks out at me the U.S. total debt. And that figure is now almost $68 trillion. Which is kind of the most pertinent? What should we be paying most attention to?
Well, I think the one to pay attention to is the one we're paying the interest on, which is the national debt. And right now that has moved beyond the 20 trillion level. It's still going up very rapidly because we're running these huge annual deficits in the area of 600 billion plus. And of course, that just keeps piling on to the national debt. And there doesn't even seem to be much voice in Washington right now for anything to be done fiscally. There are groups of people in Congress that are pushing for this, but there doesn't seem to be very much being done in terms of fiscal responsibility. In fact, a lot of the political class, they've just stopped talking about it.
Yeah, you've mentioned that on recent shows, and you are absolutely correct. I mean, it was the hottest of topics, but recently they seem to have forgotten about it, all the politicians.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's because they realize that it's become the third rail of politics. Because as soon as you come to the table and start talking about things like fixing Medicare, fixing Social Security, right away you're hitting the third rail of politics and you can't get reelected, so they just don't talk about it.
Yeah, they just dropped the potato kind of on this one. And the U.S. total debt, the $68 trillion, I mean, is that a measure we should be worried about also?
Well, no. I don't worry about that because a lot of that has to do with future liabilities. And what I would be concerned about would be the national debt clock, which right now is over $20 trillion. And the only reason to track that is because you do have to pay the interest on that debt.
I understand. Okay. And then at
Thank
the
you,
very
Gary.
bottom, it shows, as you know, the U.S. unfunded liabilities. It just blows me away.
Well, you know what that means? What that means is you have to keep getting up to work every day. The workforce has to keep getting up to work and going to work in order to produce the economic activity that will be able to service those unfunded liabilities. I mean, look, let's be honest with you. There's no way that this government would have $68 or $108 trillion sitting somewhere in a bank account to service anything. This is a government in debt. This is a government that is not only in debt over $20 trillion, but they're adding to it at a substantial annual rate. Now, the good news is, if there's any good news here, that we should be able to service and be okay if we can keep the annual deficit below 3% of gross domestic product. But we're even struggling with that right now. We're a little bit above that. So hopefully at some point we'll get some fiscal sanity in Washington, although I would not hold my breath on that one. For information on my investment letter, that's Bob Brinker's Market Timer Investment Letter, go to bobbrinker.com and request a complimentary bank issue. Very easily done. Go to bobbrinker.com and click on the Request a Complimentary Bank Issue feature, and that's all there is to it. And, of course, the October edition of the Market Timer Investment Letter has just been published this week. And while you're at the website, you can check out Money Talk On Demand because you can stream our Jabberfest to your computer and download to your smartphone, as many do. That's Money Talk On Demand. Of course, the investment talk is year-round. And with Money Talk On Demand, you listen wherever you go and whenever you like with Money Talk On Demand. Sign up at bobbrinker.com right there at the Money Talk On Demand logo. And we do archive many weeks of our guest segments. And by the way, last week, we had an outstanding guest segment, which is available only at Money Talk On Demand, and that was in hour 3 when we hosted and interviewed the former vice chair of the Federal Reserve and the professor of economics, and also the fine author Alan Blinder of Princeton University. So we certainly welcome you to check out Money Talk On Demand. And we welcome your calls on the toll-free line, 1-800-934-2221. That's our contact number right here on the flight of the Starship Money Talk.
This is Money Talk.
On your radio across America and worldwide on the web. It's Money Talk. Thanks for joining us. Bob Brinker here. Good to have you with us. Jerry is in California. Jerry, welcome. Hello, Jerry. It's your turn. Okay, Ravi, I think Jerry's listening to his radio. Let's go over to William in Charleston, South Carolina. William, welcome to Money Talk.
Yeah, I'm listening to you, sir, as I've been instructed to do, and follow the directions. Yes,
you are right on the button, William. You're right on the button. What's up?
Okay, here's what I want to talk about. I don't know if you've got it on your little screen there, but I want to talk about taxes, and I want to talk about the consumption tax. Now, there was a consumption tax advocated for about 12 years by Neil Bortz and Congressman Linder that advocated 23% national sales tax.
Yeah, William, didn't you? I think we had. Didn't we just recently have this conversation, you and I?
And we can't stop until you pass.
Well, I appreciate your dedication to the cause. But the fact of the matter is, William, that the reason you have not had any legislation for a consumption tax successful is because of the regressive character of a consumption tax. Because a consumption tax penalizes the most the person with a 100% propensity to consume, and penalizes the least the person that has a low propensity to consume. Therefore, if you are paycheck to paycheck, you're spending all your money, you're always paying a consumption tax on everything you earn. If you're at the top end of the earnings ladder, well, you're not spending anything close to everything you earn, and therefore a consumption tax is far different for you than it is for a paycheck-to-paycheck worker. That's the reason, and I know you're dedicated to the cause, but that's the reason that you've had no successful legislation on this. Now, for those who have tried to push a consumption tax, they apparently do not understand this propensity to consume problem that a consumption tax creates. And that's why it's been basically killed before it gets to a vote every single time. Jerry's on the line in Illinois. Jerry, it's your turn.
Yeah, Bob, you got a very interesting show. There was a gentleman who was talking a few minutes ago about the debt crossing the $20 trillion. I wonder if you could think of it in terms of a balance sheet vis-a-vis the government and maybe the balance sheet of the individuals. And I'm thinking in this concept. If you think of it in terms of a $20 trillion, and I don't have that in my mind, maybe you do, what are the total assets of the government? Now, I know that doesn't tell the whole story because the government could still tax and they could get money whenever they need it, one way or the other. But still, if you wanted to quantify the assets of the government with what they own, what would those assets be, and what would the capital be like if we treated the as opposed to debt and capital? And the same thing on an individual basis. You know, you hear in good times that the total assets of individuals are maybe $70 trillion. So I suppose on the right side of the balance sheet, you'd have debt by those individuals and other liabilities, and you'd have a capital of the public. I'm just curious to see how I'd like to think in those terms and see what the numbers would be. I've never seen anything on that.
Well, that's because there are no numbers that you can cite to answer your question. Those numbers have not been produced because no one knows. Not everybody could agree on what value. For example, let me give an example. What value would you place on Mount Rushmore? What value would you place on all of the national parks, the incredible, the unbelievable national park assets of the United States? What value would you place on all of the historic infrastructure that exists, for example, in places like Washington, D.C.? There's no one that can. There's no way for everyone to agree to place a value on those.
So how do you know when we get?
Well, let me finish. I'm sorry. What value would you place on the entire United States military complex, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, all of it together? What value would you place on? You see, that's where your question leads, and you're not going to be able to get an answer to that because you would have to get people to agree on a value. You're going to find a hard time doing that.
But you see, unless we get some way to quantify that vis-a-vis the other, we never know when we're really, really, really in trouble. Because we could say, well, this is just a small pittance of what the value of the country is.
Well, I disagree because I disagree.
We could base this on.
No, I disagree with you on that because except for the fees collected from the national parks and some other revenue, the real way for you to know how we're doing is whether we can service the debt. And as I said earlier in this hour, and I've said many times over the years, that as long as you keep the annual deficit at 3% or less of the national debt, then you should be able to service, in a growing economy, you should be able to service the debt. That's how you make that decision.
And what about the balance sheet of individuals? You know, when
that has very little to do with what. That's a totally separate topic.
I know,
obviously,
but I mean, it still ties into economics.
Well, I don't understand the connection. I don't understand the connection. I don't understand the connection between a discussion of the national debt, the annual deficit, and how to service the national debt, and your personal balance sheet. I don't see a direct connection. I really don't.
Well, I think if there were certain criteria that could be established, you could come up with some kind of numbers where you're really in trouble here.
Jerry, you've given obviously on an individual basis, you're in trouble if you can't service your debt. If you don't make your mortgage payments, then you're out the door. Basically, if you don't make your car payment, your car is gone. So, I mean, that's pretty easy to figure out, Jerry. I appreciate the call. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get Jerry to Jerry. Jerry is in Lincoln, California. Hello, Jerry.
Yeah, this is my fellow that's been listening to you for years and years. I was wondering what your impression is of Bitcoin, which is a digital currency. Apparently, Christine Lagarde of the International Monetary Fund has shown some approval of it, and also the Bank of Japan. Is there any credence to this digital currency?
We've talked about Bitcoin a lot. We've had guests on the broadcast that have talked about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been a very popular currency with drug dealers and with those that are dealing under the table. I think that the average citizen is not excited about using a currency that can fluctuate hundreds of dollars a day in value. And I think most people, at least speaking for myself, I prefer to use currencies that have a reasonably identifiable and stable value as opposed to a currency that can be worth $3,000 per unit one day and $2,500 the next. Way too much volatility from my point of view.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Jerry. Good to hear from Lincoln, California. Our toll-free line, 1-800-934-2221. Let's get out to Manhattan Beach. Hello, Ray. It's your turn.
Thank you, Bob. First-time caller. We've been a long-time Market Timer subscriber and been following the Market Timer Portfolio 2 since around 2000. And we have about $1 million in the stock market using that portfolio, my wife and I. And I'm 63, my wife is 72, and just subscribed to the new fixed income through you. And we're wondering if it's time to change, going from portfolio 2 to maybe being a little bit more conservative at this time.
I think at those ages, I would take advantage of the record highs that we're looking at and move to Model Portfolio 3 in the Market Timer Investment Letter, because Model Portfolio 3 is designed for those approaching or in retirement. And the way that the portfolio is structured, you should be able to substantially reduce your volatility. And the last thing you need in the world right now is volatility. You don't need that. Okay,
perfect. That's great. Well, thank you, Bob, for your advice, and we appreciate it over the years. When my wife and I started out, we got married in 2000. We each had $60,000 apiece, and then using Market Timer, we were able to build up our portfolio and our assets. So thank you.
It's a great story, Ray, and congratulations to you and your spouse for doing a job so very, very well. And thanks for calling.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
Our toll-free line, 1-800-934-2221. That is our contact number. And yes, in the investment letter, we publish Model Portfolio 1 for aggressive investing. That's a stock market portfolio. We publish Model Portfolio 2 for long-term investing. That's a stock market portfolio. We publish Model Portfolio 3, which is a balanced portfolio, which divides the assets between the stock market and fixed income securities. And the whole point of a balanced portfolio is to reduce the volatility, and that's why we prefer to use that for those approaching or in the retirement years. Now, obviously, so we also publish an income portfolio for income only on page 7, and you can mix and match between the portfolios. You can use portfolio 1 or 2 for your equity weighting. You could use the income portfolio on page 7 for your fixed income weighting, or you can use some configuration of Model Portfolio 3 or the one we publish, model portfolio 3 configuration, which is basically designed to be a 50-50 allocation between the two asset allocation areas, and that's certainly another approach that you can take. 1-800-934-2221. Jim is on the line in the land of enchantment. That is New Mexico. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Bob. How are you today?
Doing great. What's up?
Well, this talk of a consumption tax or a value added or a national sales tax, that it's double taxation for people who have put their retirement funds into Roths. We pay the tax up front. We don't get the tax deduction when we put the money into the Roth IRA. And now you found a way to tax us when we take it out. The government promised that would be tax-free at withdrawal time.
Yeah, well, just keep one thing about government promises in mind, okay? If you look at history, government promises are good on the day that they're made and until they're changed. And that's the way that works. As far as what you're saying, you are correct. I would not lose too much sleep where you are over this issue because of what I said earlier. The fact of the matter is, I do not see how a consumption tax structure to replace the income tax model is going to pass Congress. And the reason I say that is because they will not be able to find a solution, I don't think, to the problem I mentioned, which is that a consumption tax is extremely regressive. It taxes all of the money that is earned by those that are paycheck to paycheck, which is a very large percentage of the country, Jim. I mean, you would be shocked if you saw a figure on what percentage of the country is paycheck to paycheck. It's a really big percentage. And all of those people would be taxed on everything they make because they have 100% propensity to consume. I don't see how they're going to get by that.
Well, thank you for letting me at least speak my mind.
Good to hear from you.
Thank you.
1-800-934-2221 is our contact number. You are welcome to join us. We are cruising on America's Money Program, Money Talk. Whether you're caught up in the struggle for the legal tender or just wasting away in Margaritaville, you're always welcome right here on America's Money Program, Money Talk. And if you'd like to join us on the toll-free line, wherever you're listening, 1-800-934-2221. From California to the New Rhode Island, 1-800-934-2221. Let's get out to Evanston, Illinois. It is your turn. Welcome to Money Talk.
Yes, Bob, this is Pradeep Berry from Evanston, Illinois.
Oh, thanks for calling. What's up?
Yeah, well, actually, this is the first time, basically I was sitting and I was listening to your program, and it is a really very interesting program. And
well, thank you. We are in our 32nd year. How long have you been listening?
To be honest with you, I used to listen a lot of program, because I was in the leverage funding and crisis management in this country, Mm-hmm. And I have turned around, basically so many companies in this country that, when I think the concept is the same. As a crisis management, when you can turn around the companies from liquidation, and save billions and billions and $billion and billions of people, and the same concept applies to United States of America. But somebody has to work hard day and night. It is not a charitable case, and this is not a job. Basically, you go in the morning at 7 o'clock and come home at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You have to work day and night, to perform this country, I was working 18, 20 hours, So I want to tell you this thing, that this country is one of the richest country in the world, We have all the resources, but there is so much fixed and variable cost, which basically these politicians are enjoying, themselves, you see. What right they have to play around with the taxpayer money to spend, on their personal luggage, like recently this our minister, the cabinet minister, cabinet thing, he was enjoying his life, on his chartered plane paid by the government cabinet minister, and so much money basically they are spending. I think it's time that we should all sit down together, all the intellectuals, everybody has to have join. Without sacrifice, without anything, nothing is going to happen, This country can be rebuilt, Look at 1920. Roosevelt, he turned around the country into a different shape. And now we have this respected President Donald Trump, whether he's good or bad, but he's our president. Now, our president, we have to respect him, and we have to tell him, Mr. President, we have elected you to not to enjoy your life or your people cabinet's life, fire and fire thing. You are working for the American people. American people have hired you, and your first responsibility is if you can be happy and be known in the history of the world, like Abraham Lincoln and other people, that you have to do something different, what they could do. How long this life is for? Because mark your words so that world can remember you. Otherwise, where there is a difference between you, tree and stone, they also live and decay and die. No,
Pradeep, I want to just say I found a period, and I just want to say thank you for sharing. Gene is on the line in North Carolina. Gene, it's your turn. Hello, Gene. Raleigh, North Carolina. Gene, welcome to Money Talk.
Yeah, you're talking about the consumption tax proposal that would be unfair for people who have a propensity to spend all their paycheck to consume. Would that apply also to the state sales tax then?
Well, no, because you don't have to pay a state sales tax. Just go to Oregon, you'll pay zero.
Right. So you have to move to a state without a sales tax, but for this.
Well, wait a minute. If you're concerned about the issue you're raising, right? It's an entirely different issue, because the fact of the matter is that state sales taxes, I believe in every case, are in the single digits. Well, we're not talking about a 20 or 30 or 35% tax when we're talking about a state sales tax. But you do have the option, unlike at the federal level, you do have the option of living in a state that has a zero state sales tax. And I just threw out Oregon as one example. It's not the only one. But I do appreciate the call, Gene. And keep in mind, state sales taxes are single-digit figures, as opposed to a much larger figure that would apply to a consumption tax nationally. Appreciate the call. More to come. Stay with us if you can. It's America's Money Program on the flight of the Starship Money Talk.
America's most trusted advisor on money matters for 25 years. Now, Bob Brinker.
From the beaches of Waikiki to the shores of Block Island Sound, it's America's Money Program, Money Talk. Bob Brinker here. Thanks for joining us. You're welcome to chime in on the toll-free line at 1-800-934-2221. That is our contact number. And so many things we've talked about over the years on Money Talk that can help you to get ahead, help you to make progress financially, and that's what it's all about. That's why people work so hard to try to make some, well, not only to pay their current bills, but to try to make some financial progress over time. And it does take time. But there are a number of things that you can do that can help you along the way. Now, we've talked about paying yourself first. What does paying yourself first mean? And, of course, you have to be able to afford to do this. But it means ideally putting a minimum of 10% of everything you make aside, investing it for the future, saving it and investing it for the future. Now, there are a number of programs that are in place. Now, if you can do more than 10%, that's wonderful. But we try to set the bar at a minimum of 10%. If you have to start lower, so be it. Maybe you can work yourself up over time. But the bottom line on all of this is there are a number of ways that you can do this and actually benefit from doing it. One of them would be the traditional IRA or the traditional 401k, where you're allowed to put that money in. If you qualify, you have to check the qualifications, but most people do qualify, and you can place the money, for example, in a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k. The limits are quite generous, and that way you're able to put that money to work. And let's say in a traditional 401k, you're taking that money off the top of what you are earning. You're taking it off the top of what you're earning. So if you earned $40,000 and you put, and assuming you had a 401k or a 403b or a 457 that would allow you to put, let's say, 10% away, if you had that type of a program at work, you could put that money off the top. In other words, you would not be taxed on that money when you invested it. You'd be taxed later on down the road. For example, if you take it out of retirement, it would be taxed as ordinary income. But in the meantime, you'd actually be saving taxes on the money that you contributed to a traditional 401k. I mean, that's just one example. But there are many examples out there of ways for you to invest in a tax-privileged account and also get a tax benefit while you're doing it. So you're saving, you're investing, and you're getting a tax benefit all at the same time. So that's something certainly to look into. And if you have questions about that, you can always check with your HR department, your human resources department, for that type of information. We've also talked, of course, about getting those high deductibility insurance contracts, whether it be on your home, on your auto. The high deductibility insurance contract works perfectly if you put aside the high deductible. Let's say you have a $5,000 deductible on a policy. You put that money aside, so you've self-insured the deductible. That money is aside, for example, in a money fund or in a CD. And so you have that money aside. For top liquidity, I would use a money fund, actually, not a CD. And that way, if you have to get hit on your deductible amount, you have that money saved. Meanwhile, you're getting a lower premium because you've taken a higher deductible. The higher deductible gets you a lower premium. And when you compute the rate of return on that money you've put aside, you're already getting money market interest on that money. You're also going to add to that return the fact that you're paying a lower premium because you have the higher deductible. These are the kinds of things that you can do to make a tremendous difference over the long term. Obviously, the tax-privileged account investing is huge. You're saving, you're investing, and you're getting a tax benefit all at once when you do it that way. And also, we've talked about the value of whole life versus term life. I don't like whole life, I don't like universal life, and I don't use it. Term life insurance provides you with a death benefit for a breadwinner, and that's the real purpose. That's the real purpose of life insurance. So you will find with term life insurance, you're able to get far lower premiums almost all the time than you would with whole life or universal life. The other thing you'll find is for a dollar of premium you pay, you get way more death benefit with term life insurance than you're going to get with whole life and universal life typically. And so that's the benefit of term life insurance. The purpose of insurance is a death benefit for a breadwinner. That's what it's all about. And so with term life insurance, you're getting that positive maximum bang for each dollar of premium in the death benefit. And if you don't have to cash it in during the term of the policy, so be it. That's okay too. But the point is, you're getting the purpose of insurance, which is death benefit, at a maximum value for each premium dollar. And we've talked about that. By the way, there's a bit of a skirmish breaking out this weekend between the president and Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee. I only mention this because Senator Corker would be an important vote. He's a GOP senator. Would be a very important vote on any tax bill that does come before the Senate. The reason I say this is the following reason. Senator Corker has said this week that he's not going to vote for any tax bill that raises the deficit at all. he won't vote for any tax bill that raises the deficit. So he said this week. Meanwhile, you have Senator Schumer on the other side of the aisle saying he's not going to vote, or his party is not going to vote for any tax bill that is going to cut taxes for high earners. Well, when you take these two together, right, we already know that Senator Schumer and his party, they're not going to vote for a tax bill. They've basically said it. They're not going to vote for a tax bill that cuts taxes on high earners. So we assume they're a block, right? So we have over here 52 GOP senators that have the power to pass, if they can do it on reconciliation, and only if they can do it on reconciliation, which is no long-term increase in the budget deficit. If they can pass it on reconciliation, they have 52 votes. But if Senator Corker follows through on his statement, saying he's not going to vote for any tax bill that raises the deficit, well, there goes one, right? Well, you can only afford two. If you want to use the vice president for the tiebreaker, you can only go from 52 to 50. And then Vice President Pence can break the tie in favor of a party vote. But you can only lose two. If you lose three, it doesn't happen. It fails. So Senator Corker's statement is interesting because he says he won't vote for anything that raises the deficit. This does, of course, under the current scoring, apparently raises the deficit by what looks to be $2.5 trillion, something like that, over a 10-year period. So bottom line is, if you lost Senator Corker and two more, it wouldn't happen anyway. And the reason I say this is because we're seeing a lot of ink spilled and a lot of forests leveled discussing a tax bill. Well, you have to have the votes to have a tax bill, and you're going to need at least 50 votes, even with reconciliation, to have a tax bill pass. So this raises questions as to the future of this tax bill. Because if we're going to start hearing senators like Senator Corker and a couple others say, you know what, we're not going to do this, then it's not going to happen. So they have to get the 50 votes in order to get this through, and they have to get it through for a reconciliation vote, or it does not happen. So it's really a big deal in terms of what's going to happen with the much-discussed tax bill. More to come. Stay with us. 1-800-934-2221. That's our contact number on Money Talk. Get America's Money program at 1-800-934-2221. That is our contact number. For information on my investment letter, that's Bob Brinker's Market Timer Investment Letter, visit our website homepage at bobbrinker.com. You can request a complimentary back issue there by clicking on the Request a Complimentary Back Issue feature. And the October edition of the Market Timer Investment Letter has just been published this week. 1-800-934-2221. Let's get out to Falmouth, Mass. Mark, it is your turn. Welcome to Money Talk. Mark is on the line in Massachusetts. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Bob. I
What's up?
just tuned in and I heard your last comment from Bob Corker saying, and let me say that I used to be a Democrat and people like Corker are reasons I'm not a Republican. But he said he wouldn't vote for a tax cut that raised the deficit. And according to the CBO, which I have no faith in either, they say it's going to increase the deficit by $2.5 trillion over 10 years. But I think history has shown that Treasury receipts will far exceed that with a tax cut. And it seems like they're mixing politics with reality in this argument.
Well, I think that if you're talking about a tax cut that is going to go to those with a 100% propensity to consume, you're absolutely right that you're going to get some revenue out of a tax cut like that. That would not be descriptive of the tax cut that's currently on the table. We went into detail on this on last week's broadcast, But the fact of the matter is that if you're in the $30,000-$40,000 income bracket, you're either going to get a small tax cut or a small tax increase. It's not going to be a major factor in your life. However, if you're a high earner and you have your own business, then you just won the jackpot, because you're going to save $146,000 in federal tax on every $1 million you make. And that kind of a tax cut is not going to produce the kind of economic activity that you'd like to see, because people with that kind of money can't even come close to spending it all.
But I was thinking more in line of the corporate tax cut. I think if it gets to 20 and 15 would be preferable. There's already talk all over the world of a reverse inversion, bringing some of that expatriating the money, or whatever the term is, and bringing it back. I think that falls much more heavily on the balance sheet, the ledger, the scale, or whatever.
We've already had. I'm all for this, Mark. I'm all for repatriating foreign profits at a special low rate. But you keep in mind, we've already done this before. We did it many years ago, and studies found that most of the money that came back was used for share buybacks, dividends, mergers, and acquisitions. And I would expect that would be the same. And I'll tell you why. Because you cannot convince CEOs to go out and build factory and buy equipment unless they see the demand for their products. And in an economy that's growing 2 or 2 and a fraction, they pretty much know what the demand level is. So they're not really preparing for any skyrocketing demand in that kind of an economy. And that's the reason that CEOs don't invest money. Instead, they'll buy back shares, they'll pay dividends, they'll do mergers and acquisitions, and they'll try to buy growth through mergers and acquisitions.
So the only 2 times this has ever really been attempted on this scale were with Kennedy and Reagan. And Reagan saw Treasury receipts double. And Kennedy's weren't that extreme, but they were certainly well beyond noteworthy. I just don't see any argument against this, and I don't see any validity to Corker's argument other than the political one.
Well, you have to understand something about Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee right now. Right now, he is in a war of words with the President of the United States. They seem to be exchanging this. I noticed Senator Corker is quite available for interviews, and at those interviews that I have seen, he has been willing to say, I'm going to be real nice here. He has been willing to say uncomplimentary things about the president, all right, for his part. On the other part, there have been a number of Twitter entries on the president's account that have said uncomplimentary things about the senator. So they seem to be, right now, they seem to be in a bit of a war of words. And as we know, when we get into these situations where a GOP senator gets into a conflict with the president, sometimes they don't vote with the president. We saw that certainly with Senator John McCain of Arizona. He went through a situation where some uncomplimentary things were said about him. Remember? Oh, he's not I prefer heroes that don't get captured. Remember that to do, right? Well, next thing you know, when Senator McCain had the decisive vote on health care, he voted no. So what I'm saying is this, all right? Put your President of the United States cap on. You want to do everything you can to be as close as you can to your GOP Senate majority, right? Because if you're not, you run the risk they're going to vote against you.
I think that Corker is in a larger battle of words with the voters of Tennessee. And I think
well, no, he's not. No, he's not, because he is not running. He's going to be serving, and then he's not running. So he's going to go back to civilian life, and whether he runs for governor or some other office in Tennessee is a separate question. He has already stated he's not running for re-election. That makes him a free agent, and he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I think that's all because he's read the writing on the wall, and he doesn't...
It doesn't matter, though, does it? Yeah, but think about what you're saying. It doesn't matter. The reason that he's not running for re-election, which is his stated position, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that as a result of that decision, he is a free agent. And when you're talking about a 52-vote GOP majority, and you can only lose 2, you cannot lose 3, you have to make absolutely certain that you keep your majority together. And I think with Senator Corker's statement this week that he's not voting for any tax bill that increases the deficit, there are questions raised now because you have a Freedom Caucus over in the House, and there's some sympathy for Freedom Caucus members in the Senate. And you have a Freedom Caucus that refuses to raise the deficit. So this tax bill should be very interesting when it comes to a vote, if it comes to a vote.
Yeah, in closing, I'll say that I have absolutely no faith in the CDO, and I think $2.5 trillion over 10 years doesn't balance out against the potential for this tax.
And we heard you loud and clear when you said that earlier. And Mark, I thank you for the call. More to come. Stay with us. It's the flight of the Starship Money Talk.
This is Money Talk.
Attention investors, protect your IRA or 401k by storing your retirement at home with an Augusta Home Delivery Gold IRA. Call Augusta today at 888-852-4788 for a free guide on transferring a portion of your IRA or 401k into approved physical gold and silver coins and store them in your safe at home or at your local bank. Call 888-852-4788 today and discover how you can get up to $2,000 in silver free. Call 888-852-4788. That's 888-852-4788.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-501-3689 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-501-3689 for your free author submission kit. Again, 800-501-3689.
Any questions out there?
What is your typical schedule?
Find the answer online and listen live at 1440WROK.com.
Harvest this.
Hey, thanks for listening. We're going to make your day even better.
Let's meet our contestant.
We're giving away cool stuff all the time on our website.
Imminent prize delivery.
Have you seen those cool Apple Watches? Yeah, we're giving one of those away.
This is going to be fun.
Hey, have you been working out? No? Well, we are giving away some Power Block Elite dumbbells to pump you up.
Oh, man, I got to get in on that.
How about we just make it easy and give away a $300 Best Buy gift card? Then you can get whatever you want.
We are all over this contest, bro.
All those things and a lot more. Just visit the station website now.
Fox News Radio, I'm Steve Rappaport. The gun control debate rages on in the aftermath of the Las Vegas shooting. NRA Executive Director Chris Cox on Fox News Sunday.
We're having a conversation when people are grieving. There used to be a common decency in this country where people paused from talking about policy.
Senate Democrat Dianne Feinstein wants to ban bump stocks. Stephen Paddock used them to modify his guns.
This is one simple thing that stops the making of a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun.
Feinstein on NBC's Meet the Press. Mike Pence walking out of an Indianapolis Colts game after some members of the visiting San Francisco 49ers took a knee during the national anthem.
In an official statement, the vice president said he would not dignify any event that disrespects our soldiers, our flag, and our national anthem. He added that he believes it's not too much to ask for respect from NFL players.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Fox News. We report. You decide.
Time for your Screen Crush movie news happens now.
It looks like it's going to be a big box office weekend at the movies when the cult classic Blade Runner gets its sequel in the form of Blade Runner 2049. This time around, iconic cop Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, is joined by Ryan Gosling, Robin Wright, and Jared Leto. Blade Runner 2049 is set 30 years in the future from the first film. Also out this weekend, Idris Elba and Kate Winslet team up for The Mountain Between Us, a movie about the resiliency of human beings as they try to survive in the face of a plane crash being lost in the wilderness. In other movie news, Tyrese is slamming The Rock for Fast and the Furious 9 being delayed for a year. He claims that The Rock wanted his spin-off to come out first before Fast and the Furious 9. He's even used social media to throw shade, saying, will this be another Baywatch? The Rock and Jason Statham's Fast and the Furious spin-off is supposed to hit theaters July 2019. To get those stories and so much more, head to ScreenCrush.com. I'm Emerson Unger.
You think you know Despicable Me? Well, here's 10 things you may not have known about Gru and his minions.
That's what I'm talking about!
Directors Pierre Coffin and Chris Renaud did the voices for most of the minions, including Tim, Bob, Mark, Phil, Stuart, Dave, and Larry.
Papoy? Akala na Papoy? No. Papoy. Ah! Papoy!
Jermaine Clement of Flight of the Conchords provided the voices for minions Kevin and Jerry.
What?
Originally, the minions were going to be Gru's henchmen and be big, ugly, orc-like brutes. The filmmakers wanted to make Gru more likable, and they felt the best way to do that was surround him with incompetence. They looked for inspiration from Willy Wonka's Oompa Loompas and the Jawas from Star Wars. The Sleepy Kitty story was made into an actual book, and you can buy it. The accent that Steve Carell chose for Gru is a mix between Ricardo Montalban and Bela Lugosi. Despicable Me was originally titled Evil Me. Minions are incredibly resilient. They can survive in outer space, which means they can resist freezing and don't need air to breathe, and apparently are made up of the same stuff found in glow sticks. The filmmakers wanted to cast actors who were great at improv, hence casting Steve Carell, Jason Segel, Russell Brand, Will Arnett, Kristen Wiig, Jack McBrayer, Ken Jeong, Danny McBride, and Mindy Kaling. Kristen Wiig plays Miss Hattie in the first one, and Lucy in Despicable Me 2. The film's score was composed by Pharrell Williams and produced by Hans Zimmer. And here's a bonus one. Margot is wearing a Lorax shirt, and there's a minion in the Lorax movie. That's it for this episode of You Think You Know Movies. Make sure to subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and get the latest movie and TV news on ScreenCrush.com.
Want your kids to eat right? Treat them to more fruits and vegetables. They'll have more energy and feel fuller longer. This is registered dietitian nutritionist Melissa Dobbins. When your kids have a snack attack, save the day with a nutritious treat. Peel a banana, dip in yogurt, roll and crush cereal, and freeze. Or serve a pita stuffed with ricotta cheese, apple slices, and a dash of cinnamon. A registered dietitian nutritionist can help with more ideas. Or check out the recipes at kidseatright.org.
Rockford's home for Rush Limbaugh is News Talk 1440 WROK.
This is Money Talk.
Whether you're cruising in your 4-quad posi traction 409 or just chilling out in Margaritaville, you're always welcome right here on Money Talk. Good to have you with us. Let's get Amy on the line. She's in South Bay, California. Hello, Amy.
Hi, Bob. Thank you for taking my call.
What's up?
My individual stock is dividend reinvested. If I sell it, if I just sell part of it, suppose I have 500 shares and I sell 300, can I take the average cost instead of first in, first out? And later, if I buy 200 more, can I continue, to average the purchase cost?
A lot of people do that, Amy. What they'll do is they'll buy a position in a stock, and then they'll reinvest the dividends in the stock, and then they might add to the position later on, and then they take the average cost basis, all of the money that's put in versus the number of shares that you have, and that is a fairly simple way, if you keep good records, of just figuring out what your average cost basis is. Very popular way for those that'll buy shares and then reinvest. It's used in mutual funds also for reinvestment. And frankly, I think it makes a lot of sense to use the average cost basis in that kind of a situation. Let's get Paul on the line. Paul is listening to the great KKOB Radio Albuquerque, #1 ranked. Paul, it's your turn.
Hi, Bob. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. I had a question for you since a lot of people are talking about taxes and tax reform. I kind of get what you're saying about the consumption tax, but I've always been real interested in the flat tax that Steve Forbes, among other people, talks about. It sounds like it would be real simple to do it. He says do it on the back of a postcard, and I guess that's the biggest appeal for me. I also like Senator Corker's idea of it being revenue neutral. I think that's pretty important in these days. And I guess my question to you is, if you would weigh in on this, if you make it optional, okay? So if you wanted to do it the old way, would that solve the problem of it being too regressive? And I just wanted to see what you thought about that.
Well, I think the reason that we have not had any serious vote on a flat tax proposal is the lack of progressivity. And I think that the lack of progressivity also explains the reason that when you look at flat tax proposals, they almost always come from high earners. A high earner loves a flat tax because the propensity to consume is low for a high earner. A lot of the money earned by a high earner is invested and build up in terms of the asset base for the individual. So they love a flat tax because it's not progressive. And I think this is really what it's all about. Obviously, somebody that's a high earner hates a progressive tax because we've had high earners pay as much as 92% at the federal level back in the day. So this is the reason. If you ever wondered why do the flat tax proposals come from high earners, this is one of the key reasons.
Okay. Well,
it produces a lot of extra money if you're a high earner in a flat tax society.
Kind of a fantasy to expect Congress to really do anything.
Well, there's another. Well, you're right about that because so far, I mean, this has been an almost. It might be unprecedented, but this has been I guess you could even say it. It's October now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could almost say that this has been an unbelievable year. Here we have a GOP president, a GOP House, and a GOP Senate, and no major legislation has passed in 2017. I have to tell you, that's incredible. That is incredible. Astounding is the word. Astounding is the word. Paul, I thank you for the call. Always great to hear from the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the great KKOB Radio. Our toll-free line, 1-800-934-2221. That is our contact number. Colin is on the line in Missouri. Colin, it's your turn.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for taking the call. I'm like I told the screener, I'm a licensed life insurance agent here in Columbia. I have been for the last 23 years. I want to challenge you on the premise, the notion that term is exclusively the best way to go and really the only way to go when it comes to life insurance. I sell a lot of whole life and universal life in addition to term, and I think that's just way too general, way too generic, and is really problematic for a lot of people who ultimately will want permanent coverage as they get older. Are you there?
Well, I'm listening to you.
Okay. Well, I mean, do you want to respond to that, or do you want me to go?
Well, I don't recall using the word exclusively. I certainly would say in the vast majority of cases, I would prefer to go for the maximum death benefit because to me, if you're buying insurance, typically you're buying insurance to protect the income stream of the breadwinner and perhaps to provide some additional money for college education expenses and things of that sort. And the way I can do that maximum bang for the buck is to buy term life.
Okay, well, but you didn't say that a few minutes ago. When I listened earlier, you said exclusively.
No, I did say that. I did say that. No, I did say that. I'm trying to focus in on the purpose of buying a life insurance policy as I see it, and that is to protect the income stream of the breadwinner. And if I want to get the maximum death benefit, I'm going to buy term. That's what I'm saying.
Let me ask you a question then, Bob. I think this will be a fair question. Let's say somebody gets to, and I've faced this many, many times in my career. And again, I sell a lot of term life insurance. I'm a fan of term life insurance. But let's say we get to the end of the term life insurance policy, and there's been health events in somebody's life, and their life hasn't panned out the way they thought as far as their asset growth and their cash on hand and their ability to retire. And now this life insurance policy is really important to them, and they get to the end of the term. What would you say to that individual? Would you say, too bad?
Yeah, I do think whole life and universal life is overpriced relative to its value. I do believe that, and I think term life is a very good value. And you, by the way, you can buy extended term level premium if you're concerned about the point you're raising. You can buy extended term level premium to take care of that.
Well, that's extended term, but that will have an end date too, Bob. You know that.
Well, the point, but so does your earning power have an end date. We're assuming that by the time you get to retirement age, you're no longer going to have the same pressure to insure the income stream that you want to insure during your earning years. And that's what this whole point is. So that if you've insured your earning stream during your earning years, mission accomplished.
But if it's not mission accomplished because you had a health event, you're making a generic assumption that does not fit everybody. I will stipulate that maybe more than half the population should buy term and exclusively term. But I think you ought to qualify your comments because it's way too generic. There are so many people that get to the end of a term and they have very little or life didn't pan out and they want a legacy. They start to transition to legacy thinking, Bob. And a life insurance policy is a great way for legacy fund. As you know, it goes to the beneficiaries on a tax-free basis, assuming we're not in some kind of a state tax situation.
All right. Well, now there's where the divide is. I do not believe in legacy thinking. I don't believe in that.
Well, you're applying your morality then to other people. A lot of people,
it's not morality. It has nothing to do with morality. It is an opinion about finance. I do not believe in legacy thinking.
Now, why not? You don't think people who want to leave something to their children or heirs, that you think that's a flawed line of thinking?
I think what you provide your child is a good educational opportunity. That is your legacy to your child.
Okay, well, I think other people will disagree with you, and we will go
and they're
back.
entitled, and I'm sure they'll let me know. But the bottom line is, if you have provided your children with a good education opportunity, then you have handed the baton to them to make what they do of their life. It is not your responsibility as a parent to leave money to your children. I do believe it is your responsibility as a parent, and not everybody does this, to provide them with a legacy of an educational opportunity so that they can make something of themselves. That's what I believe.
You know, first let me say I really appreciate the opportunity for you to give me extended time and talk to you. A lot of radio talk show hosts wouldn't do this. I've tried to call in places before, so I appreciate that. You know, the second aspect of this is the assumption that cash value life insurance, particularly, let me use whole life, it does not have a good internal rate of return on the cash value. As you probably know, Bob, with BOLI and COLI, corporate-owned life insurance, bank-owned life insurance, banks and corporations buy billions of dollars of life insurance every year. And it's the form of life insurance that goes right up to the MEC limited, the modified endowment contract limit. Individuals can do that too. I sell it all the time, and people love it. It is a great asset to accumulate cash value in a tax-favorable way with a competitive rate of return in comparison to other fixed income assets. Now, would you tell me that that is not correct?
I would tell you that from my point of view, and this is just my personal opinion, I believe that whole life insurance and universal life insurance is a lousy investment. Just an opinion. And Colin, again, I'm glad you had an opportunity to share your point of view. 1-800-934-2221. That is our contact number. Bob Brinker here. It's America's Money Program. Money Talk.
Money Talk.
We are back in America's Money program and our toll-free line, 1-800-934-2221. We are going to Sunnyvale, California. Dave, it is your turn. Welcome.
Hey, Bob, how are you? I love the show.
Doing well. Thank you.
Hey, I'm here in Sunnyvale. I'm at in line at the dump for free dump weekend and enjoying the long
Saving coin.
It doesn't get any better than this, right?
That's right. That's fun. That's a lot of fun. Nothing more delightful than standing next to a dumpster, I always say.
That's right. So I had a couple of questions for you. One of them is about, well, maybe I'll ask that one later. It's about the future of what you think Bitcoin is going to do. But,
well, let's do that one. Let's do that one because we already had a Bitcoin conversation today. I have no idea. I think it's a speculative, whatever it is, a speculative wannabe currency. And I think that from the standpoint of anybody with serious money, and I don't know if anybody with serious money has it all in Bitcoin, but I think if you have serious money, you'd like to have something with a little bit of stability, maybe a lot, and not something that can fluctuate hundreds of dollars a day in value.
Yeah. Okay. There is a suggestion that as we approach the number of outstanding Bitcoins, 21 million, I think, it's going to become more stable, but who knows? I think it's speculative.
Well, I can tell you one thing: the drug dealers love it, and the underground economic community loves it.
Okay, that makes sense. Hey, my next question is more personal. I've accumulated about $1 million. And I'm 63. I got a late start having kids, and I've got 4 left. I have 5 kids, 4 left. One of whom is in UC Santa Cruz right now as a junior, and 3 coming up for whom I have to pay for college. And I'm in fact faced with a bill this month of another $7,000 for UC Santa Cruz. I wonder if you can advise me whether I ought to take a loan, cash out of the 401k, or a loan against the 401k. Take cash straight out of the 401k to pay for this tuition, or if there's some other vehicle you recommend for doing that.
I think that with that kind of a liability for 4 college educations, I think you need a package approach for each of the students. I think that you need to have, first of all, you need to have every effort made by each of the students to get whatever scholarship aid they can possibly get. Have you looked into that?
Well, for the 23-year-old, I did. The others are 15, 13, and 11, and we have not yet really.
No, they're too young. They're too young. But on the 23-year-old, for sure.
Yeah, we've gotten. He looked into it a little bit. I have not, but he got us a $7,500 loan, actually. But you're right, absolutely. That's something I need to pursue more aggressively.
Yeah, I think you need a package approach for each of the students, because this is too much of a liability for you to take upon, and I'm not excited about you sacrificing your 401k retirement account for this purpose. I do want each child to have the best educational opportunity available, but if that involves going to less expensive institutions, that might be part of the deal.
Yeah, it is a state college, UC Santa Cruz. It's just that.
Yeah, but what is it costing? What are they going to charge you?
It's about 28 to 34 a year, including.
See, that's where we are. You go to a state-based institution, and you still can get set back $30,000 a year. That's a lot of money, and times 4, it's a tremendous amount of money. So I think you do need a package approach. That package approach could also include some earning power on the part of the student.
Yeah, I've got to get him to do that. And his best friend's dad told his son that he was going to pay for the first 2 years of school, and I thought that was such a good idea. I had my son do it at junior college. He paid for his books, tuition. He worked. I helped him out a little bit with the car, but he paid for almost everything, and that gave him, I think, a much greater appreciation for what he was doing. And he,
the
actually
other
excelled,
things. The other things that you can do is put other members of the household to work, or you take additional work to try to produce additional income. I'm trying to look for a package here that will help you to not blow up your 401k retirement account.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
So I would certainly save.
Short term, I'm going to take out a loan.
Yeah. I would certainly save as much as you can because you're going to need it, and you might want to save some money outside of your 401k. You might want to save some. We're getting some interference. You might want to save some money. I think it might have been a cross line there, Dave. You might want to save some money outside of your 401k account that would then be available for that purpose. I'm glad you called, because this is always a very difficult situation when you get behind the curve, as you are, Dave. You're behind the curve on providing funds for educational purposes here for two reasons. First, because you have a large family of 5, so you have 5 educations to deal with. And second of all, because, as you said, you had a late start, so you had less time to put this together, even though you've been operating in one of the greatest bull market runs of all time in the last 8.5 years. This one ranks right up there among the greatest bull market runs ever. And even with that, when you get a late start, you have many college tuitions to think about. It certainly is a challenge. I do appreciate that call very much. Yeah. I especially like the call from the life insurance salesperson, because we really did have differences of opinion. I mean, my opinion on life insurance, and I've stated it so many times over the years, is that it's a death benefit for a breadwinner. And to get the maximum death benefit, you go for term life insurance. And once the breadwinner's earning years are over and the breadwinner is into retirement, then I think that need basically goes away. And when the life insurance salesman then presented this business about, well, what about the legacy? Not from my point of view. No, I don't believe in that at all. And I thought that was an interesting point of view as well. You can stream Money Talk on your computer. Download Money Talk to your smartphone. That's Money Talk on demand. You can sign up at bobbrinker.com. Of course, the investment talk is year-round. And that way you listen to Money Talk wherever you go, whenever you like, with Money Talk on demand. There's more to come. Stay with us. More to come right here on America's Money Program, Money Talk.
Take money and I can make it into more money.
25 years on the air with advice on Money Matters. Here's your host, Bob Brinker.
Welcome to America's Money Program. This is Money Talk. Bob Brinker along with you. Thank you for joining us. And we have our guest segment upcoming, and we'll be talking more about that momentarily. Firstly, let's take a look at the data that will be flowing through the canyons of Wall Street. Monday is an unusual day because it is Columbus Day, and Columbus Day means that the banks are closed and the markets are open. Now, that happens on rare occasions, but it will happen tomorrow, Monday, October the 9th. The banks are closed and the markets are open. And we're not going to get much in the way of economic news tomorrow either. However, we will start to get a data flow on Tuesday. And by the way, Neil Kashkari, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, will be speaking at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday morning. And, of course, anytime the Fed bank presidents or Fed governors are speaking, people follow closely what they say. On Tuesday night, Robert Kaplan, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, will also be speaking. So there are a couple of Fed speeches scheduled for Tuesday morning and then again on Tuesday evening. We won't be getting a lot of economic data on Tuesday, nothing of major value. On Wednesday, we will see the Chicago Federal Reserve Bank President Charles Evans speaking early in the morning in Zurich, Switzerland, early in the morning U.S. time. Looks like a rubber chicken circuit event Zurich time, and he will be speaking with the gnomes of Zurich. And as I've mentioned to you, back in the day, I actually met with the gnomes of Zurich on a trip that I made over there, and met a lot of gnomes, and they're nice people. I have to say the gnomes of Zurich are nice people, interesting people. That'll be coming up on Wednesday. We'll also get the FOMC minutes, Federal Open Market Committee minutes. That'll be released 2 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday afternoon, telling us what the Fed members were saying at one of their recent get-togethers. We'll also, on Thursday morning, get the Producer Price Index. The index used to be known as the Wholesale Price Index. And right now, the Producer Price Core Index, which is the most important, the one that excludes food and energy, that is at 1.9% year over year. And we will get an update on that on Thursday morning. We'll also get a speech on Thursday morning from the Federal Reserve Governor Jerome Powell. He'll be speaking on Thursday. And I'll tell you, the Fed governors and presidents are just out there talking all the time. They're just jabbering away. Friday morning, we're going to get the Consumer Price Index for the month of September. And we're expecting to see a bounce here because of strength in energy prices. Oil prices have been strong. Energy prices have been rising. So we're expecting to see a bounce here in the Consumer Price Index. It could be a sizable bounce. The consensus estimate is 0.6%. And if we get a bounce like that, that will bring the year-over-year core rate, excluding food and energy, which is the key rate to watch, to 1.8%. That'll be on Friday morning. Also on Friday morning, we'll get the retail sales for the month of September. The estimate on the consensus is positive 1.9%. Retail sales, less autos and gas, estimated to go up 0.4%. Keep in mind, in September, we had the ravages of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma, and that certainly was a factor in retail sales activity in that situation. We're going to be talking a lot more about retail sales and a lot more with our upcoming guests. Stay with us when we return right here on Money Talk.
Money Talk.
Rush's Week in Review, Saturdays at noon on WROK.
This is Money Talk.
On your radio across America, worldwide on the web, it's America's money program, Money Talk. Bob Brinker along with you. You know, we've heard a lot of talk about quantitative tightening. In fact, we spoke with Alan Blinder, the Princeton economics professor and author of the great book, After the Music Stopped, which is on the recommended reading list in the book section at bobbrinker.com, and I highly recommend that particular item. But, you know, we talked to Professor Blinder about quantitative tightening on our program last week, and of course that is available at Money Talk On Demand, and that's in hour number 3 last week. And it was interesting because Professor Blinder agreed that we should expect to see upward pressure on interest rates over time as part of quantitative tightening. Now, you know, that's logical because we were told correctly that quantitative easing would lower rates, that the purchase of bonds by the Federal Reserve would lower rates because of the demand. It would push up the prices of bonds and lower rates, and it did. In fact, it lowered rates to record levels. They were down around 1 3/8% at the bottom, and they've already risen about 100 basis points. Right now, they're at 2.35%. The 10-year Treasury bond yield, annual yield, is 2.35%. So we've already seen a 1% or a 100 basis point increase in rates. But that is unlikely. That is unlikely to be enough to contain quantitative tightening, because we're going to have and it's going to start very slowly here this month, and it has started very slowly this month at $10 billion a month. $10 billion a month is not going to be a gigantic amount to upset the market. But within a year, the Federal Reserve has stated they're going to be throwing $50 billion a month, or $600 billion annual rate, on the market by removing them from their portfolio. And so, and as I've mentioned on the program in the past, for those of you that listen to the broadcast, we have mentioned this is the way they get the money off the balance sheet, because they write their checks when they redeem the bonds. They write the checks against the commercial brokerage accounts, and that removes the money from the balance sheet when those checks are cleared. And so this is something that's going to be interesting to watch, because the question is, how much will rates increase as the quantitative tightening program coexists with the actual raising of rates that the Federal Reserve is also promising? Now, they may change this down the road if the economy stalls, but as of now, they're on record as saying they may raise rates in December, and they may raise rates 3 times in 2018. And if they did that, if they did all 4 of those rate hikes a year from now, or by the end, I should say by the end of next year, the federal funds rate would be 2 to 2.25 instead of 1 to 1.25 where it is right now. Our guest in this segment is Scott Galloway. Scott is the author of The 4, The Hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. We're going to be talking about all 4. Scott Galloway is professor of marketing at the New York University Stern School of Business. He's also the founder of L2 Incorporated. Scott Galloway, our guest. Scott, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us why you wrote this book.
So I've spent the better part of the last 10 years researching these 4 companies, and felt that while we all use their products and are impressed by them and sort of in awe of them, that we didn't really appreciate how powerful they are, and that they actually call on specific instincts, which has led to sort of mass adoption. And also, I think there's some interesting questions and societal implications and issues for companies and anti-competitive concerns that need thoughtful analysis. So this, for me, was part admiration, and also talking about some of the issues I think these companies raise.
And that's a great point. And we're glad you wrote the book. It's a good book. And I want to talk about these companies, and as particularly in the context that you write about them. You write about Amazon as fulfilling individuals' need, or people's need, to hunt and gather. Tell us a little about that point of view.
So more for less has always been a winning business strategy. It's the strategy of China's economy. It's the strategy of Walmart, and now it's the strategy of Amazon. Specifically, when I was talking about hunting and gathering, men tend to be more sort of strategic strikes or surgical strikes in terms of shopping, as throughout history their role was to kind of recognize a target, and then sort of speed and violence were the next actions. Whereas the female gender was more about typically gathering and examining items and being a little bit more meticulous. And so if you look at the way men and women shop, and I realize I'm making fairly broad generalizations here, but women tend to be much more thoughtful and feel the fabric, whereas men tend to just want to get in and get out. And initially the web was mostly men shopping, but now it largely mimics the population. But for the most part, Amazon really kind of hits a need for more, and that is the penalty for too little is starvation throughout history. The penalty for too much was excess fat or a little bit of gluttony. But open your cupboards, open your closets, and we have 10 to 100 times what we actually need. And Amazon foots to that kind of consumptive need for always more.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Our guest is Scott Galloway of New York University's Stern School of Business. His new book is The 4, The Hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. Let's stay with Amazon for the moment, Scott, because I think you've touched on some, well, first of all, you score a direct hit, at least from what I know of shopping, about how men shop and how women shop. However, I wonder about this because, not so much with the men, because whether they shop online or they go into the store to buy their pair of shoes and get out and get on with their lives, I don't think there's a whole lot we can change about that. But the female side of the equation is particularly interesting because it seems to me, and this is from my personal experience, observation, of course, it seems to me that particularly women, I would say, and I think you're so right about that, enjoy shopping. Not so much men, perhaps, but a lot of women enjoy the experience of shopping, which is totally consistent with the way you just described it. So it makes me wonder, is this really what, let's talk about the female population exclusively right now. Is this really what these people want? Do they just want to click and buy and have it delivered at the door or whatever? Or do they want to shop? And it seems impossible for me to believe that shopping is going to go away.
No, it's not, but you're going to have less and less of it because as, we largely now have, a lot of households are dual income, more women in the workforce, which has been a great thing for our economy. And if you think about your whole universe of purchases, the majority of them are tedious, low consideration, kind of low joy purchases. So whether it's buying a Porsche or buying a pair of Christian Louboutins, or buying a nice watch or buying even some apparel products, those can be joyous, interesting experiences. But groceries, the things you buy every day, the things you need to sort of sustain yourself, and actually the majority of your purchases are low consideration, tedious purchases. And that's where Amazon steps in. And Amazon, especially now with Alexa in your home and artificial intelligence, your purchase history, warehouses within 20 miles of 45% of U.S. households, you now have a retailer, Amazon, that is largely in a position to probably fulfill the majority of your retail needs without you even asking for it. I think they're in a position to go from one click to zero click where they begin automatically fulfilling the products you need in your life, the grocery, some of the clothes, some of the household items, and then leave the stuff you enjoy to you. That's where we're headed, where the majority, I believe, of purchases that you make in your life are done preemptively using artificial intelligence, your transaction history. And the retailer that's best positioned to do that is Amazon.
What does that mean for shopping malls?
It's pretty ugly for malls, but it already has been. But the people have said that the store and the mall are dying, and the rumors of their death are greatly exaggerated. It's not that stores and malls are dying so much as it is the middle class, and that is, if you look at a middle income or lower income neighborhood, you'll see stores and malls shuttering. If you look at an affluent area, the mall and the stores there are just fine. But a lot of what's happened with malls is just that there are too many of them. Between 1970 and 2015, malls opened at twice the rate of population growth, which is unsustainable. And the return to urban centers, or the return of disposable income and affluence to urban centers from the suburbs, has taken a real toll on malls, which thrived with this flight to the suburbs. So your B and C malls in real trouble. Your A malls, your high-end malls, are actually doing quite well.
And also, they seem to be redesigning over the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years especially, redesigning the malls, more open space, more of a family environment seems to be coming into a lot of the town square type developments.
100%. They're re-engineering them for experiences, more theaters, more restaurants. These are smart people who have big investments, and a lot of the better malls, just like any other business, are reinventing themselves. And if you look at so, for example, General Growth Properties and Simon Properties are two of the largest mall owners in the nation and focus mostly on what you would consider malls in affluent areas. And they've actually done quite well. Their stock's been beaten up a little bit over the last 12 months, but these are companies that have consistently returned, pretty decent returns to shareholders, and they're fully leased. So when you're talking about stores, when you're talking about malls, show me the affluence of the zip code, and I'll tell you how the stores and the mall is doing in that area.
And I'm glad you mentioned the overstored aspect, because I think it's been quite apparent to the naked eye that the United States got overstored.
Oh, absolutely. I believe there's 3 feet per square per capita, 3 square feet per capita, or 3x the number of square feet per capita in the U.S. is in Britain, and about 50% more in Canada. So we're just overstored, and we're going through a rationalization right now where you're going to see a lot of just gross square footage go away. But the store still plays a critical role in brand building. 88% of our purchases are still done in a brick-and-mortar format. So that, again, the death of the store has been greatly exaggerated. We're just going to rationalize the sheer amount of it, and they're facing competitive pressures and need to differentiate from online. People are no longer going to stores for products. They're going for people, and that is they want expertise, or they want someone who can help them get in and get out of the store. Because sometimes in terms of convenience, bombing into a local store, getting something quickly, and then taking it home is, in fact, the most convenient way to shop.
Scott, what do you make of the Whole Foods acquisition by Amazon?
You know, I think it's going to be for Amazon what Instagram was for Facebook. I think it's going to be probably the best acquisition in retail of the last 10 years. Amazon now, with the acquisition of Whole Foods, has license or permission to get into every affluent refrigerator in the U.S. And with 60% of U.S. households now Prime members or subscribe to Prime from Amazon, the only way Amazon could really create greater intensity across those households was to be in the one consumer category that every household spends a lot of money on, and that is grocery. So this is a huge win for Amazon because effectively they bought 550 well-lit warehouses that have fantastic proximity to the wealthiest households in America. And Whole Foods, you know, I'll ask you, what is the only reason you don't shop more often at Whole Foods?
Well, I have an easy answer for that, and that is because my wife does it for me. And I go to Whole Foods a lot, but I don't go to Whole Foods as often as my wife goes. Let's hold that thought. Scott Galloway, our guest. Your call's welcome. 1-800-934-2221. Right here on Money Talk.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit beefy, or even with type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Affordable term life insurance is out there. Call Term Provider and speak with Big Lou at 800-481-1458. 800-481-1458 or visit biglou.com. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too.
Attention small business owners, you know how hard it is to get funding to grow your business. Next Wave Funding is a direct funder that can help you get the cash you need when you need it, even if your credit is not that great. If you've been in business for over 1 year, have at least $12,000 in sales every month, Next Wave will purchase your future earnings and give you the money you need. It's as simple as that. This is by far the easiest and best funding for existing businesses. Call 800-430-4566. That's 800-430-4566.
Listen more, know more. Rockford's most listened to news talk station. 1440 WROK.
Fox News Radio. I'm Steve Rappaport. 1 week later, and authorities still have no motive for the mass shooting in Las Vegas.
As for the investigation, more on the elaborate planning. Police say the gunman calculated distance from the concert venue, length of drop, and the power of his rifles, and that told him exactly where to aim. Police continue to dive into the past of 64-year-old Stephen Paddock. He was known of at many Las Vegas casinos, but he was completely unremarkable.
Fox's Dan Springer in Las Vegas. Another price drop at the gas pump.
This time 7 cents from 2 weeks ago, with the new average at $2.56. And this is the same amount they declined in the prior 2 weeks, making a total of 14 cents drop since Hurricanes Harvey and Irma did so much damage on the Gulf Coast.
Industry analyst Trilby Lundberg, prices spiked 30 cents after Harvey and Irma hit. Fox News. We report, you decide.
Hey, thanks for listening. We're going to make your day even better.
Let's meet our contestant.
We're giving away cool stuff all the time on our website.
Imminent prize delivery.
Have you seen those cool Apple Watches? Yeah, we're giving one of those away.
This is going to be fun.
Hey, have you been working out? No? Well, we are giving away some Power Block Elite dumbbells to pump you up.
Oh, man, I got to get in on that.
How about we just make it easy and give away a $300 Best Buy gift card? Then you can get whatever you want.
We are all over this contest, bro.
All those things and a lot more. Just visit the station website now.
Your Screen Crush movie news happens now.
It looks like it's going to be a big box office weekend at the movies when the cult classic Blade Runner gets its sequel in the form of Blade Runner 2049. This time around, iconic cop Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, is joined by Ryan Gosling, Robin Wright, and Jared Leto. Blade Runner 2049 is set 30 years in the future from the first film. Also out this weekend, Idris Elba and Kate Winslet team up for The Mountain Between Us, a movie about the resiliency of human beings as they try to survive in the face of a plane crash being lost in the wilderness. In other movie news, Tyrese is slamming The Rock for Fast and the Furious 9 being delayed for a year. He claims that The Rock wanted his spin-off to come out first before Fast and the Furious 9. He's even used social media to throw shade, saying, will this be another Baywatch? The Rock and Jason Statham's Fast and the Furious spin-off is supposed to hit theaters July 2019. To get those stories and so much more, head to ScreenCrush.com. I'm Emerson Unger.
You think you know Friends? While auditioning for Friends, Kathy Griffin and Jane Lynch became actual friends while trying to land the role of Phoebe. No other actors were considered to play Ross because Crane and Kaufman wrote the role specifically for David Schwimmer. James Michael Tyler, who plays Gunther, was an extra who got promoted just because he was the only one who knew how to operate the espresso machine. When planning the pilot, the writers originally intended to focus on Joey and Monica as the main love story. Most 22-minute sitcom episodes take about 3 hours to film, but each episode of Friends took 5 hours to film due to rewrites and retakes. Producers realized that an apartment with the number 4 would be on a lower floor, and Monica's apartment was clearly on a higher floor, so it was changed to 20. In 2013, it was estimated that Monica's Bedford Street apartment would sell for $3.5 million. The series finale aired on May 6, 2004, and was watched by 52.5 million viewers. It's one of the most watched series finales in television history, but not the most watched episode of Friends. Get the latest movie and TV news on ScreenCrush.com.
1440 WROK. This is Money Talk.
Coast to coast, border to border in the islands of Hawaii and north to Alaska. It's Money Talk. Bob Brinker here. Our guest, Scott Galloway. Professor Galloway, author of The Four, The Hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. Scott Galloway, professor of marketing at the New York University Stern School of Business. And Scott, we're delighted to have you with us, and this is a fascinating discussion from my point of view. Okay, you asked me why I don't go to Whole Foods more often. I gave you a great answer, but obviously you had something more in mind.
Well, most people would answer that it's because it's so expensive. And what you're about to see happen with Whole Foods, and it's already happening, is that Amazon has cut the prices dramatically of several of Whole Foods products. And when you talk about the potential for Amazon to lay over its operational excellence and, more importantly, its zero return ROI hurdle, Whole Foods is about to become the grocery equivalent of a Mercedes for the price of a Toyota. So while Amazon is the fastest growing online retailer, with the acquisition of Whole Foods and with the pricing, the lower pricing, Amazon is now about to become the fastest growing offline retailer.
Okay, so this is all about market share, and market share.
Yeah, dominance is the word I would use. But I mean, when you're talking about Amazon, you're talking about almost 2/3 of all online growth went to one player, Amazon, and about 1/4 to 1/3 of all retail growth in the United States went to one retailer, again, Amazon.
Well, I guess that's how they got the name Whole Paycheck, but maybe that name won't stick if what you say is true.
They've already lowered prices dramatically. On some prices, they've lowered the price 30%. But to give you a sense for just how impactful Amazon is in the ecosystem, between the time that Amazon announced the acquisition of Whole Foods and when it closed on the acquisition, Kroger, the largest pure-play grocer in America, their stock shed 1/3 of its value. And keep in mind, Whole Foods is only 1/11 the size of Kroger. So Amazon is now so dominant in the perception of their ability to dominate any category they enter. It has huge impacts on industries before Amazon is actually even in the industry.
Are there investment areas, Scott, that as a result of your vision for what Amazon can still become going forward, are there investment areas sectors of the market that you might be inclined to avoid because of this Amazon emergence?
Sure. So I'm always a bit reticent to
well, not companies, just sectors. Just sectors.
Sure. Basically, any consumer sector that Amazon has turned to. I mean, just on Friday, Amazon announced that they were thinking about expanding their own delivery service, and you saw FedEx and UPS decline 1 or 2%. Amazon can perform what I refer to as Jedi mind tricks, and that is they can begin herding a sector just by looking at it and issuing press releases. So, retail is a difficult environment right now. You might argue that it's a bit oversold because the general assumption in the marketplace is that Amazon's going to put almost a third of all other retailers out of business. But I'd be very careful looking at any category where Amazon potentially could be a competitor, because Amazon is playing unfair in the sense that they have access to nearly infinite capital, because despite the fact they're not profitable, investors keep bidding their stock price up, and Amazon can now access the credit markets for a lower cost than China. So as Mickey Drexler, the CEO of J.Crew and The Gap said, how do you compete with a big company that doesn't want to be profitable? It is very difficult to compete with Amazon right now.
Your comments raise another question, which is, and this is just a supposition on my part, and yet, who knows, it could become reality. Let's take an area like the pharmacy business, which is really dominated these days in the United States by two companies, Walgreens and CVS, or CVS and Walgreens, whichever you prefer. Those are the two companies that dominate the pharmacy business. And your comments raise a question. Well, what would happen if Jeff Bezos were to announce, we're going in the pharmacy business?
Well, it's already happened. In the trading days that Amazon announced that, both CVS and Walgreens, the companies referenced, had some of the worst trading days of the last 12 months. So,
yeah, but it hasn't been fulfilled. It hasn't been totally fulfilled to what it could do to their business models. I mean, people are trying to figure out a way that they can still be behemoths in the pharmacy business. But if Amazon were to unleash what you're talking about, which is doing it for no or little profit, that could change everything.
And that is likely what what might happen here. Amazon doesn't go at sectors kind of half-heartedly. A third of all batteries sold online now are Amazon private label. The majority of growth in retail is going to one player.
Well, this raises a question then. Back in the day, if we think back in the day, there used to be a word called antitrust. There used to be a department called the Justice Department that would take antitrust action back in the day. We haven't seen much of that recently. Is that a threat to Amazon?
I think it is. And to your point, antitrust reviews, there was about 20 of them a year in the 80s. There's now about 3 a year the last 10 years. So there is significantly less review or scrutiny in terms of anti-competitive behavior. However, Amazon is becoming so dominant and so frightening for so many industries that I do think there's a chance that you could see some sort of regulatory intervention. However, it's not going to come from where most people think it's going to come from. I don't believe it's going to come from Washington. I believe it's going to come from the EU, only because the EU registers much of the downside in terms of competitiveness and job destruction, but doesn't register the same upside as the U.S. So they're more likely to go after Amazon or the rest of big tech than Washington.
Could that be a threat to the common stockholders of Amazon?
I think all of big tech shareholders need to absorb the potential risk that, in fact, what I would say, the worm has turned against big tech. The sort of idolatry of these companies seems to be coming to an end. Just last week, the EU Commission fined Amazon a couple $100 million for tax avoidance. You had a $2.5 billion fine against Google come out of the EU that was on the heels of a $116 million fine against Facebook. So a combination of some of the bad news coming out of Uber about their culture, the supposed weaponization of the Facebook platform by the intelligence units of Russia, you are seeing the worm turn against big tech. So I think any investor has to be thoughtful about the regulatory risks or generally that the sentiment has turned or is turning against big tech.
Could that apply to companies like Apple or Google?
Absolutely. I would say Apple's probably the least vulnerable because it has the most likable CEO, and Apple right now is under threat from Amazon in the voice market, where Alexa, if you will, is sort of beating up on Siri. But Google has a 90+% share of the search market, which by dollar volume is now a bigger market than the entire advertising market of any country with the exception of U.S. And one company has a 90+ point share, which is likely a greater share than the Ma Bell or the steel companies or the railroad companies when they were broken up. So I don't think any of them are immune. They all are vulnerable for different reasons, but I find it's hard to imagine you're not going to see either greater fines or more sort of populist rhetoric that results in some form of regulation in the next 12 or 24 months. But again, I think it's more likely to come out of the EU than it is Washington.
Our guest is Scott Galloway, professor at New York University Stern School of Business. His new book, which we're talking about, is The Hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. The title of the book is The Four, which we should point out is available at Amazon.com. Where else? Let's go to St. Louis. Sam, you're on the line with Scott. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was going to ask, have you done any research into the working conditions for the Amazon drivers? And my information is that they're treated very poorly. There's been no raises for people that have been there over a year. They've set up a kind of a sham structure where they have these third-party companies, so the drivers don't get full benefits. And now they're undercutting the people that are full-time drivers with what they call flex drivers, who are basically the Uber and Lyft of delivery drivers. And what they get is even less than what the full-time drivers get.
Great question and a huge issue. And the short answer is I have not done any primary research in this specific category. There was a New York Times article which got a great deal of attention about the working conditions at Amazon. A lot of my students go to Amazon, and I would say the majority of them would report that it's a stressful, high-intensity environment, but also very rewarding. But you bring up an interesting point, and my thesis around this, and again, I haven't done primary research around this, is that some of these companies have figured out a way to create sort of a two-class system, and that is the information age or innovative workers coming out of business school or have technical skills who are awarded equity and benefits actually do very well at these companies, some of the best jobs in the world. But when a company like Uber can have 2 million, and they call them driver partners, which is Latin for people that don't get benefits or share in the upside of the valuation, which most recently was $70 billion, such that 8,000 employees, and I think it's grown to 12,000 at Uber, can split that $70 billion. We have, if you will, emerging among these companies sort of a two-class system, which is dangerous. The notion that just the quote-unquote information age or the innovative employees get to split all the spoils, and some of the drivers or contractors just have an entirely different work environment, is a big issue and one we need to wrestle with.
Well, Scott, one would hope that a founder like Jeff Bezos, whose net worth gets closer and closer to $100 billion as the years go by, one would hope that someone as fortunate and wealthy as Jeff Bezos, competing to become the wealthiest person on the planet, would provide his workers with the best possible wages and benefits. Is that the case?
I'm not comfortable really assessing the equity of the wages, whether they're good or bad at Amazon. I just don't have enough data. What I will say is I agree with you that we need a new gestalt in business. The gestalt right now is more of the Jack Welch, where employees are seen as a cost, and you want to use technology to cut costs, cut employment to increase shareholder value. And we have to move to a system that instead of shareholder value being everything, we talk about stakeholder value. More the kind of Henry Ford attitude, where even though we could have paid his employees $2 a day, he paid his employees $5 a day, recognizing that the true aim of any organization or any economy is to build a robust middle class. And I feel as if we've lost some of that gestalt in American business, that we idolize these innovators who are able to increase their share price at sometimes at fairly significant human cost. So we need more of that Henry Ford in our economy and less of that Jack Welch attitude.
Back to the phones, we go to Davis, California. Ike, you're on the line with Scott Galloway. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is really very interesting. I'm always questioning and a little confused about how, when one studies the wages and how they affect discretionary income, how would you define the middle class? I live here in California, and if you look at the coast as opposed to the Central Valley, I mean, middle class can be defined differently in terms of the discretionary income one has. But nationally, how would you define the middle class? And what percentage of the wages would you say that is today as opposed to, say, 20 years ago?
Thanks for the question. So I'm not an economist, but I'll take a stab at it. Most of the studies I read define the middle class. They take household income and they divide it up into quintiles, from the lowest fifth to the top fifth. And they define the three in the middle as the middle class. And if you look at those three quintiles, not the lowest, not the highest, but the ones in the middle, the percentage of households that fall into the middle, if you will, the second, third, and fourth quintiles, it's gone from about 62 or 65% to around 51 to 55%. So there's no doubt about it. The middle class is being squeezed. There are just fewer and fewer households by almost any metric that could be identified as middle class.
Our guest is Scott Galloway, Professor Galloway, author of The Four, The Hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. There's been a lot of controversy about Facebook with various things that have gone on the Facebook pages. What's your reaction to what's going on with Facebook?
I think it's a real issue. I think the notion that our democracy can be threatened by someone with a credit card paying in rubles, or that the largest social network in the world, and what is arguably the largest media company in the world, where somewhere between 40 and 60% of Americans get their news, the notion that it was weaponized by an intelligence unit of the Russian government is a really frightening prospect. I also worry that just the youth of this organization, the average age of the Cleveland Cavaliers players is 29, the average age of the Detroit Lions players is 29, the average age of a Facebook employee is 28. So I worry they lack the historical context for the importance that the fourth estate serves in our society. Also, we have a company that is a media company. They've tried to claim they're a platform, but they're not. If you run content, if you serve advertising against that content and you make a lot of money and you enjoy the gross margins, you're a media company. And Facebook has embraced the margins, the profitability, and the influence of a media company, but appears to be allergic to the responsibilities of a media company. So I believe the scrutiny and controversy is warranted here. I think the worm has turned, and Mark Zuckerberg needs to show full stop that he's going to do whatever is required to ensure this does not happen again.
Our guest, Scott Galloway, Professor Galloway, New York University Stern School of Business, author of The Four, The Hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. And Professor Galloway's book is available, of course, and ironically, at Amazon.com. Scott, we thank you for your time. Very illuminating discussion, and congratulations on this fine book. We wish you continued success.
Thanks very much, and thanks for your time.
This is Money Talk.
Money Talk. This is Money Talk.
We're back in Money Talk. Wow, Professor Galloway raises an interesting question. Could we see, is it even possible that we could see antitrust talk against companies like Amazon, against even companies like Google that so dominate the search market? seems less likely with a company like Apple that only has a small percentage of the global smartphone market. Lots of competition there. But you have to wonder with companies like Amazon swallowing up Whole Foods, and you just have to wonder if antitrust would ever come back. For information on my investment letter, Bob Brinker's Market Timer Investment Letter, go to bobbrinker.com and request a complimentary bank issue. Easily done right there at the homepage. Just click on the Request a Complimentary Bank Issue feature. And the October edition of the Market Timer Investment Letter has just been published this week. While you're at the website, check out Money Talk On Demand information. You can stream our Jabberfest to your computer and download to your smartphone. That is Money Talk On Demand. And, of course, the investment talk is year-round. With Money Talk On Demand, you listen wherever you go, whenever you like, as so many people do all over the globe. Sign up at bobbrinker.com right there at the Money Talk On Demand logo. That was fun talking to Professor Galloway, and that's a good book, The Four by Professor Scott Galloway. A very, very fine job indeed. Hey, before they beam me out of here, let me thank all of our Money Talk Trekkies for cruising with us on the Starship Money Talk. Program coordinator Ravi Chandran, producer Meredith Oaks, technical directors Angel Bordone, and Mr. Bob Mack. Till next time, happy investing, and may the odds be ever in your favor.